Hi.
Hi.
Y'all, I'm with Sarah Lampert, who I went to college with. Is it over 10 years ago now?
Oh my
I'm aging
God.
myself. I
I
know.
don't know.
I know.
Feels like 100 years ago.
Forever ago, and we're realizing we haven't seen each other in forever. Not that this is a visual medium, but I'm so pumped that you're here. And the world will know and kind of already does know who you are. But if they don't, who are you today for the audience listening?
Oh man. I guess today I'm still Sarah Lampert. I'm a writer. I created Ginny and Georgia on Netflix.
Amazing. I cannot wait to dive fully into that. I guess I want to go back a moment into the past many years that we haven't known one another really. And just before Ginny and Georgia became what Ginny and Georgia is, what did you end up doing post when I kind of knew you?
Oh my God.
Short script.
Yeah. I mean, no, because we went to college in Pennsylvania and it was like a huge theater program.
Yes.
And I knew I wanted to move to LA and I knew I wanted to be like a writer/director. But what I didn't know was the difference between TV and Broadway. I don't know, because I was 18, a fucking moron.
And so nobody really
yeah, I didn't think about it that hard.
Yeah.
I was thinking what, because I got into, I remember deciding between Muhlenberg and Emerson. And I ultimately went to Muhlenberg because they offered me a scholarship. But a big factor too was I was like, I don't know, Emerson doesn't have a football team. I feel like I should be around men playing football, even though I never went to a game. My priorities were just different. That's all I'm saying. So anyways, after graduation, as you know, moves to New York to do theater. That's what Muhlenberg pumps people into.
Yeah.
And so I moved to LA and I just didn't know anybody.
Did you move there because somebody had told you in a little birdie in your ear, this is where you go for TV and film? Or was it something you always wanted to live West Coast?
I mean, I think that I kind of knew, LA, Hollywood, TV.
Yeah.
I think that was just I just didn't put it together that where I went to school could potentially help.
Impact.
Yeah. I just wasn't thinking, I wasn't connecting dots. It was just where should I go to school? Where has football players and whatever. It's very stupid.
And of all schools for football players, sorry, Muhlenberg, this isn't, it's D3, not even.
Yeah. No, also I didn't go to a single game and also dated someone who I went to high school with the entire time in college. So really all of it very, very silly. No, but I moved to LA do you know Shira? She was my year.
I don't know. Shira whom?
Shira Hoffman? No.
Sounds familiar, but also Jews. So
Jews, sure. Anyways, I moved with her. We were roommates. She was the one other person from LA. Now there are a few Muhlenberg people out there, but my year it was just the two of us. And we moved out there. Whatever. I had a bunch of jobs in the 8 years I was out there before I sold Ginny and Georgia. I was a waitress. I was I was an assistant for a few different reality TV producers. So I worked in reality TV a lot.
Wow. How was that? Was that something that you enjoyed, or was it this is a stepping stone, or what was that like?
Yeah, I didn't know, when you move out there, I didn't know what to do. You just kind of do whatever is offered because it's not it's really hard to find a job there if you don't know anyone. So I kind of was just taking anything. But I actually do really like reality TV. I mean, it's primarily what I watch. So I was not bummed to be in reality TV, but I did know that it was going to be harder to be a writer if I was in reality TV. That jump was hard to make. I kind of had to start over again and be an assistant again in a different avenue once I had done that for a few years.
What did you major in at Muhlenberg?
Yeah, theater and creative writing, or English.
As an actor, theater concentration as an actor, or did you not concentrate?
Theater. I don't remember. I knew it was. Right. I was a double major, theater and English with a creative writing minor. That's what it was.
Did you take a class with David Rosen? What was his name?
David Rosenwasser. Yeah, my favorite professor on the planet.
Same, because I also have a minor in creative writing as well. And I remember I took one of his classes, and I was like, oh, this is the most terrifying, incredible experience I've ever been a part of, and I've never had to work so hard to get it maybe an A-.
I am so curious as to what David Rosenwasser thinks about Ginny and Georgia, because he's so like our sensibility, like I loved his class. He's one of the most brilliant men on the planet. But I just remember like our sensibilities are a little bit different. Like, 'cause he's
No
so
kidding.
he's like so anti like sentimental, and he's
Yeah.
just like so like, and I'm so like pop, like
Yeah.
like kind of tongue in cheek, kind of
Yes.
bullshit. Like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. I'm really curious to what his experience of the show was for
I
sure.
love
I
that.
love him. Oh my
He
God, I
was
love him.
so good. That was one of the best his classes were some of the best classes I remember ever taking in
Me
my
too.
life. Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, so flashback forward to reality TV, and now you're assisting in a different domain. Are you writing in the process? What is happening for you in terms of your own creative process while you're doing your hustle?
Sure. Well, it's changed a lot. I mean, when I first moved to LA, I like didn't know what I was doing, and it was really challenging. And I had no idea how to write a script because, as
Mhm.
I'm saying, I didn't major. There was no TV writing major at Muhlenberg. I actually took 2 classes at DeSales down the street,
Okay.
which was a TV writing whatever. This is all
While you were
long
there?
winded.
While you were at Muhlenberg?
Well, yeah, and it wasn't something I like tried to do. It was I got called into like the office or something, like my second semester senior year, and they were like, "Hey, funny story. We like added your math wrong, and like one of your credits for your creative writing minor like isn't, or your English major. I honestly don't remember which, but they were
Yeah.
like basically you won't finish the major or the minor. Something we fucked this up somehow. And I remember just being like at the time like, oh no, well I must finish the major or minor. Of course, now in hindsight, I'm like, that bullshit didn't matter.
Yeah.
But right, but at the time, like I must fit whatever. So I like looked around, and DeSales College, like down the way, had 2 credits. So I like figured it out where like they would apply towards my whatever thing was that I was missing. And I was able to I took like TV writing, like the half
Wow.
hour comedy and the hour drama down into sales, and
Okay,
ended
so
up
you
like,
had taken a small little, like, not actual amazing.
yeah, like
Okay.
one course there. It was actually really fun. And like it was fun to just like go to a different college. Plus, like I think it's like a very religious college. Like it's very like nuns teach classes and stuff. So I was definitely the only Jew on campus. And
Amazing.
I remember, and I started dating a guy down there, and I was like, oh, like the hot,
Rebellious. Yeah.
yeah, hot Muhlenberg girl, like sweeping into DeSales. Like that's not what it was at all, but that's like what it was
Unreal.
in my
Of
head,
course.
right? Great.
Of course. Okay, so you had that kind of under your belt. You obviously had your English degree, whatever that even meant, but it wasn't specific for TV writing. How
No,
did
yeah.
you start to get into the actual structure of it? Was it just like trial by fire? Did you end up taking classes out in LA? What were you doing?
I mean, I was under the mindset with, again, like I didn't think about anything. Like I should have, like I didn't, like you're saying it now, and I'm like, yeah, like I should have looked around me at some point in my college
No,
collegiate
but
experience.
obviously something's
No, and
worked.
and been like, I don't know how to write a script, which is what I'm trying to do here. I just
Yeah.
like that didn't. I don't even think that was an option. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But I think writing is writing, honestly. I mean, obviously they're different, and there are kind of formatting. The math of it is different, like the format and the structure, and you know, you have to know, you know, how to structure a scene, how to go in and out. But at the base level, writing is writing. And so I
Mhm.
think that was just kind of my mentality.
And you just started from the fight that like the idea of writing is writing and the structural part of it just kind of you started learning as you went?
You are giving me far too much credit. No, these are like me like waxing poetic on my life choices, like now with like the power of hindsight. Like, no, I didn't think anything when it was
Well,
happening.
like, I
I was
guess the
just
thing
like,
that
la
I'm
la
getting at
la.
is, like, you wrote these incredible scripts that clearly have profited and or been sold, but, like, you wrote them with no actual structure? Because this is blowing my mind if you have, in the
I
best
mean,
way.
well, no, because the first script I wrote was an actual nightmare. Like for some unbeknownst reason to me, like I did the entire script in all caps lock. I don't know why I
Obsessed.
thought that needed to happen,
It was
but
a choice.
it was a choice. I don't know. I think I like Googled one script, like Google image, and like maybe it was in
Wow.
my dyslexia like turned it into who knows.
Unreal.
Unreal. So no, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I just kept writing just because I love writing. And then I did take I didn't take many, but I took an online extension course at UCLA, and I really liked that. And that kind of taught me there was just like a spec writing script. We had to like pick, this was like 2010. So however many, 12 years ago now.
Mhm.
And at that point, what you did to try to get like a staff writer job was you would spec a script. Like you would just write a fake episode of a TV show. I think I wrote for like New Girl or something. And you
Mhm.
write a fake episode of that TV show And that's how people would hire you based on that. That's no longer the case now. When we're staffing Ginny and Georgia, we just read everyone's original pilots. Though I do think there's something honestly very, very helpful about seeing like how people can adapt to different shows' voices. That was the purpose of the spec.
Yeah.
So I took a spec writing course, and that showed me that you don't write all dialogue in caps, you moron. Why did you think to do whatever? It doesn't matter. And then from there, I was just kind of like bumming around LA, like bouncing from like, you know, different assistant job. Like I worked at a bunch of different big reality TV companies for a bunch of different executive producers. So what that kind of did, which, you know, again, hindsight's 2020, I didn't realize I was learning these skills at the time, but reality TV was a little bit more like the Wild West, like back then, like it was just kind of starting its boom in 2010. Yeah. So what that meant was there weren't as many like kind of rules in place. So it was a little bit freer in the sense that like I would go in with all my bosses and help them pitch as an assistant, which is just like, which was awesome. Like all these reality TV shows. So like I would be the one, and I'm not an editor, but I'd be like cutting together sizzle reels of like found footage from YouTube, like for proof of concept, and like putting together these reality TV decks to like try to sell the show. So I was like starting to kind of learn and think how to pitch, even though I wasn't doing it for scripted TV, just like, but thinking about things in terms of like, here's the world, here's the tone, here are the characters, here are like possible plot lines, and just starting to kind of organize and think. And also what reality TV helps you do is there is no script. So you have to rely on painting a picture.
Right.
And really like immersing in the world. So I learned how to be a good pitcher from working in reality TV as an assistant.
How did you end up getting those assistant jobs? Was it just like, here's a Craigslist thing, or did you know people or?
So my first ever job, I was a waitress first, and then Shira, my roommate, she worked at Paradigm, which is a talent agency. And through that, she heard that like someone needed, like a manager needed an assistant. So I was like this guy's assistant for like a minute. And then while I was there, I just like met people. Like I don't even like it, just like I don't know, like at bars. Like it sounds so terrible. But like I like had made a friend. I kind of knew this group of people because they'd like gone to high school at like in my town, like a different high school, and they were older and cooler, and doesn't matter. But I started hanging out with them kind of, and then one of them was hooking up with this girl, and then I became friends with the girl.
First.
And then naturally, and then like ditched the guys. And this girl was like, hey, my friend is looking for, like, we know someone who needs an assistant at their reality TV production company. Like, would you be interested? And I was like, absolutely, yes.
Wow.
So I got that job. I remember I had that job, and then I was between these two jobs, both assistant jobs. And I remember I took one instead of the other. And the job, and I won't call out who did this, but the job I didn't take, I wrote like this lovely email, like, it was so nice meeting you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm actually going to go in this other direction. And they wrote me an email back like, how dare you? Don't you know who we are? You'll never work in this town again. And I just remember like forwarding it to my mom, like, what the fuck is LA? Like, what is this?
Jesus.
Yeah. So that was like a fun intro to.
I hope you sent an email being like, hey, remember that? Like, just to like actually like found that old email and responded to that being like, hey, I know you told me I'd never work again. I hope you're doing really well.
I mean, I don't have to find it because it's like burned into my like traumatized brain as like an impressionable, like whatever, however old I was, baby, 22-year-old maid, like, what? I'm not cut out for this. Like, no, I would never. It's fine. Who cares? But I started working in reality TV as an assistant. And that was interesting because I wasn't on the creative side of it. I was the executive in charge of productions assistant. So I had to do like all these budgets, which like he was like, okay, like just like put together this like Excel grid of like all these things. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure, no, definitely. And I remember that was like, what's Excel? Like that was the first time I ever opened the green squiggly instead of the blue W. You know what I mean? Like I didn't. So I'm like Googling like how to add cells in Excel, like just totally figuring it out on the fly. But very quickly moved over to the creative side of reality TV where I was much more comfortable because that was just drama, and I'm a messy bitch who lives for the drama. So
we love. While you were working there, were you writing on your own?
So yes and no. That was definitely the plan, but I definitely got swept up in like the LA-ness of it for a while. I did end up writing 2 scripts like it was 8 years. I should have written more than 2 scripts. And so actually the reason I wrote Ginny and Georgia is because I had just gone through a really bad breakup and I was just so frustrated with myself. And at that point I was the assistant. The company that I was at the longest was Matica Productions. And my boss, Jeff Toller, who's awesome, he brought me in because his background was like movies, mostly movies, and also scripted TV. And obviously my background was reality TV. And it was just kind of a 2-person company for a while. And he is actually the one who I gave my finished script to after I finished writing it first. And he's the one who ultimately got it to Netflix. Wow. So he's a producer on Ginny and Georgia. Yeah, which is awesome.
Wow, but I love that.
Yeah, that was really nice. He like bought me the latest final draft for like my Christmas gift one year. God. Once he knew I was a writer. Yeah, he was really supportive, which is really, really special. But so I wrote Ginny and Georgia in an online UCLA extension course because I was so frustrated with myself that I'd kind of gotten comfortable in this like development land and I hadn't written anything in a while. So I signed up for this course and I wrote Ginny and Georgia during the UCLA extension course. Yeah.
Was it just like a pilot episode or was it like
No, just the pilot.
Got it. How did you, I guess let's talk about it. How or what inspired you for this particular story? Was it brewing? Was it like, let's just fuck around? Like, what was it for you?
Well, so it's really interesting because this is again where like you never know where your path is going to take you, right? And like what things are going to help you get to ultimately where you want to be. And it doesn't always like make linear sense. Like, a lot of my friends are writers and their path was very different than mine. And they're very successful, but they just did it differently where they were a writer's assistant or a showrunner's assistant. And then they got a script and then they got a staff writing job and, and they worked their way up. Which makes more sense and you kind of learn how to do it. And I do think that there's a lot of merit in being in a writer's room before you're the creator of a TV show.
On Netflix, yeah.
But how I did it, which actually I think really helped me ultimately just sell it, was what I'm really good at and what I had to learn how to do because I worked in reality was just really come up with like short ideas. Like kind of just all the time. So this was when I signed up for the UCLA extension course, they were like, okay, you're going to write an original pilot. So just come up with a log line. And I'm sure a lot of writers have this, but just innumerable amounts of log lines just kind of backlogged and ready to go of just like worlds, characters, dynamics that interest me. And the reason I decided to go with Ginny and Georgia and write that in the class was because I am always really interested in a mother-daughter dynamic. And specifically Ginny and Georgia, because there was something just so fascinating to me about like 2 women who have really the strongest bond that 2 women can have in the mother and daughter relationship, who will never fully understand each other for various reasons and love each other dearly, but have great propensity to hurt one another. Yeah. So that was kind of what sparked that. The dynamic between the 2 women is what I was interested in.
Wow. And in this class, as you created it, was it something that was easy for you? Did it like come out of you very like willingly?
Yeah, it was easy. It helps to have a deadline. That's kind of why I wanted to take the class. It helps to have a deadline and it helps to write something that you find fun. Like I love drama. Like I love high school. Like I love murder. Like, I was just like, was having a good time.
Like on your epitaph, like Sarah Lampert loves murder. People are like, oh, no.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I was just having a good time. Like they were it's a wild show. Like it jumps around in tone quite a bit. It is a wild ride. And I was just having a good time.
So from that class, you had this pilot. Then what?
So I had this pilot.
Is that when you gave it to your boss and was like, read this? Or was that I need to create more episodes? Was it now I know I like this and can be this whole thing. Let's make a pitch deck. And this is what, like, where were you at?
So I had this pilot and I gave it to my boss and he was like, this is actually good. Thank God. So he ended up giving it to another scripted producer that he knew. And they had just had lunch with someone over at Netflix, an exec over at Netflix. And like a year before the Gilmore Girls revival, A Year in the Life had just come out. And that had done really, really well for them. So they were kind of looking for a mother-daughter show that they could make for cheap, which I feel like is the log line of Ginny and Georgia. So so they were really interested in it. So they brought me in to pitch it. I came up with this 20-minute pitch. I did the whole pitch.
Pause. Before you even asked him to look at this, were you just like, hey, I have a pilot, would you read it?
Yes.
Or was it like, hey, I have a pilot, do you know all your friends, can you give him this material?
No, I gave it to him to read. I was like, I have a pilot, can you read it? I'm sure he had some notes or something, and I did the notes, and then he started sending it out.
Wow. And that was on his own accord. You weren't like, please send this. He was just like, this is great, it needs to be.
No, I never would have asked him to do that. He had to lead the charge on that. I mean, I would have tried to sell it regardless, but I have a good relationship with him and knew he had my back, and
that's so incredible.
Gave it to him first for sure.
Wow. Okay, so cool. Now I'm getting back to where we are. Okay, so then they were like, we're going to pitch this or we need to have this type of thing. Is this the first pitch you've ever created for your own work?
Yes.
Pitch deck, sorry.
Yes, definitely. It wasn't a deck. It was me talking for 20 minutes. Which I'm like pretty good at pitching, I will say. That is like what I learned from reality TV.
What are your strengths in the pitching land? Like, why own that? Please own that. And why are you good at it?
Every pitch is like a 20-minute performance, essentially, where it's like, yes, you're getting the main points across. But for me, because the show jumps around in tone a lot and it goes really light, really light, happy, funny, but then it also like deals with some very deep, very intense subject matters. So you yourself have to be able to navigate through whatever the tone of your show is. So there's like a formula to pitching, whereas you start the pitch by kind of talking about yourself, why you were interested in creating this project, whatever. Or then you go into the world of the show, and then you go into the characters, and then you summarize the pilot, and then you pitch out the full season. And then you spend like a little bit of time just doing, and then season 2, and then season 3, just like a sentence or 2 on each. And then you kind of finish it up with, the themes of the show and like kind of the bigger, broader picture of the show. That's where my English major came in handy.
No, but I mean, I would argue that. And also, I don't want to give Muhlenberg the credit, but like, I would imagine you having experience as an actor and also in performance generally, like standing up there for 20 minutes by yourself, being stared at about something that's creative on your own. Like, I don't imagine that was as daunting if you were just somebody who was like only been in your room writing all the time.
Totally. No, yeah, you become the storyteller. So you're almost like telling a bedtime story to the execs across the table, where it's like, then you're in a scene where like this happens and this and this, and you have to like do the whole thing.
I love it. What is the difference between a verbal 20-minute pitch versus say like a pitch deck? Or why would one do one or the other? When is one requested?
So a pitch deck is only ever really supplemental to the pitch itself. In the sense that like I recently just pitched another TV show, and because it's Zoom, you just have to assume that people are like less engaged in what you're saying. So it's really helpful to have like a visual pitch deck during your pitch, where it's just like nothing. It's just like, here's, all the actors that you've cast your fictional TV show for and like their names. So like they can just like have something visual to grasp onto as you kind of go through it.
Got it. So when you're in there in this 20 minutes, how are you feeling leading up to it? How are you feeling post? What was that experience like?
Honestly, I was really feeling like I was ready for it. Like I had a lot of confidence. I knew that I could do it. I don't honestly, like looking back, I would have less confidence because it's so hard. It is so hard to make a TV show. But at the time, I don't know. I had been out in LA at that point for 8 years, and I just felt confident.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you also are owning that. I feel like so many people are like, no, it just like happened. It's like, no, like I knew what I was doing, or even if I didn't, I felt like I could, or I think there's something really, really empowering and wonderful about like, A, knowing your worth, but also B, not apologizing for like the way in which you show up. Like, I think that's just
yeah,
awesome.
I'm sure I'm going to come off as a pompous asshole.
No.
But, I mean, there, once it started, that's where I had quite a bit to learn. But I knew I was a good pitcher, and I knew that I was ready to do that.
Yeah. So after you pitched, what was the reception like, or what happens after a pitch, and like in terms of negotiation, decisions, like all of the logistical parts?
I can't explain it God, I like hate everything that's coming out of my mouth right now. But like, do you ever just feel like you're in the right place in the right time doing the thing that like you've been led up to do? Like that is what it felt like. Like it felt like everything. I can't explain it. Like it happened during August, which is my birthday month, which like I also always feel a little extra magical. God, I literally can't.
I love.
I don't know. Like I just knew it. I can't explain it. I remember emailing my agents and my manager and just being like, hey, I have a pitch at Netflix coming up. Like, and then they called me after, obviously, and they were like, how did it go? And I was like, they loved it. Like I did it. I did the thing. And they were like, okay, well, like don't get your like doing a good job of being reps, which is like trying to manage expectations. But I'd been in development for 8 years at that point. I'd been in, over 50 pitches, like not mine, but I knew when it was like going to be a go and when it wasn't. And I don't know, I can't explain it. I just knew. It's so silly.
No,
whatever.
It's great.
Anyways, I can't say I've gotten that feeling again since then, but it all did just feel something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It felt something in the air. But
and then they get back to you after? Do they tell you in the like immediate, like what happens?
They called me 2 days later and they said that I needed to find a showrunner, rightfully so, because I had, again, never stepped foot in a writer's room. And then pending finding a showrunner, they were going to pick it up for 10 episodes.
Wow.
Which was crazy.
And so this is where Deborah comes in.
That's where Deborah comes in. Yes, correct. I love that you know Deb. Yes.
I mean, I follow you. I feel like I know you. I don't have any real idea of your life, but I feel like you and Deborah's relationship is wild, and you need to write a show about that alone. So I'm ready for that.
I tried to pitch Netflix to let Deb and I have this like online content, like 2 first-timers making a show, women, friends, dancing, whatever. And they were like, why don't you just make your show first? I was like, okay, that's fair.
Like we're paying you for that, not for this.
That's fair. Yeah. Good point. No. So yeah, I met with a bunch of showrunners.
How do you find them? How did you go about that?
So part of the development process for a script, especially for a first-time writer, is you will always get paired with a showrunner. Normally, you try to do that before you even take it into pitch somewhere. The fact that my script got into Netflix's hands at the exact moment that they were looking for a low-budget mother-daughter show was, again, like, I don't know, magic in the August air.
Sure.
Whatever. Okay, great. But typically what happens, and I went through this a lot in development, is typically you try to pair the young writer with a showrunner, and then you go in with like a sexy package, and then you try to sell the show that way. Which is very hard to do because showrunners or writers they typically want to do their own stuff, right? So it's just tricky to do. And so, but where that changes, where that becomes a little easier is once you have if you get a showrunner, we're going to greenlight 10 episodes. That makes it obviously more attractive. So it was very easy to meet with showrunners because a guaranteed 10 episodes is a very, that's a rare thing. So it was a more attractive package than like join this project and then we'll take it out to pitch, which I've tried to do with other projects that never, whatever. So how it works is the producers reach out to all of the showrunners they know who they think would be a good fit, but then also agents submit their clients to who they think would be a good fit.
So is there like a breakdown that goes out to showrunners in this kind of way?
This is like the kind of like networky stuff of the industry where it's the producers will reach out to all the different agencies, like the big agencies, and be like, hey, we have this project at Netflix. We have this young writer. I was young at the time. We have this young
Still young.
Whatever. We have this young writer. She's very green. We have this project. It's going to be this low budget Netflix show. They want 10 episodes. Like, which of your clients do you think would be a good fit? It's a mother-daughter show, murder, yada, yada, yada. Basically, I met with all these showrunners, and I ultimately, Deb's brilliant. Like, Deb is amazing. I can't say enough good things about her, although she's kind of yelling at me via text at this moment, but not really. So I met with Deb, and we just like really hit it off. Like, there was a lot of just kind of mutual respect and ideas and creativity and flow and all of that. And I just really felt comfortable with her as the leader of the show, honestly. And so from there, So then what happened is Deb and I had to put together a pitch to go back into Netflix and pitch out, because what I did when I went in is I pitched, the characters, the world, and a lot of season 1. And then what Deb and I did is we went back in and we really built out season 2, 3, and 4, just as like this has a lot of legs, and also look at us, don't we go well together? And like, here's our package. Here's us. Here's the 4 seasons of the show.
Is that how many you've been greenlit for?
No, that's just how many are in
they have to
our little heads.
Cool.
Yeah. So after we did that, then we got a call like an hour after that, and Netflix greenlit the show, which
Holy
is
shit.
crazy to greenlit for 10 episodes.
What did you do when you got that call?
I was actually in a meeting with a lawyer because I didn't have a lawyer, because why do I need a lawyer? So I was meeting with lawyers because I could tell I was going to be needing a lawyer, because they're the ones who put together your deal for Netflix and all of that. So I missed it because I was in a meeting feeling very like important in Beverly. I was like in Beverly Hills meeting with a lawyer, like ha 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 ha. I think I was like hungover and whatever.
Of course.
Great. So I was driving back from that, and I get the call, and everyone was freaking out. Like when I turned my phone off silent after this meeting, my phone, it was like lit up like a Christmas tree. Like literally everyone was trying to reach me. It was really wild. And the first person I called was my mom, because I guess a little sidebar that probably isn't funny unless you know my family, but my mom had been in the Sprint store and the Apple store all day in Boca Raton with my grandmother, trying to help her sort out her technology, which is the actual 7th circle of hell. So she had just been checking in with me all day. Like, is there any news? Is there any news? Like, but yeah. So the entire Boca Raton Sprint store celebrated, and my mom, like, they were all like clued into what was going on, to the news we were waiting for. Like, she was like, oh, okay, here's Brad on the desk. He wants to wish you well. Like, this was November 2nd of 2018.
Wow. Okay. So wait, I want to double back.
I only know that because it was Halloween, and I love Halloween. That's
I was going to say, you only know that because this is like a massive day in your life, but you're like, no, it's surrounded by costumes. That's literally the only reason.
It's the Halloween, to be honest.
That's it.
Yeah.
I want to double back to producer land, because you said you had these producers who were obviously reaching out to their people. How did you get those people involved, or how did you decide who wants to produce? How does that go?
So my boss is a producer. My old boss, Jeff, was a producer who hired me, who I was his assistant for 5 years at Matica. He sent it to Holly Hines and Elena Blechter, who were they've since moved. Everyone moves around in the town all the time, but they were at Dynamic, and he sent it to them. Also Jenny Daly, which it was called T Group, and now it's called Critical Content. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, everyone's like,
yeah.
But those are our producing partners, or those are the producers on the show. And how it happened was Jeff and me. I mean, it was literally a 2-person company within the bigger company of Sunshine Sachs, which is a PR firm. Now we're getting like really in the weeds, whatever. Great. But so Jeff sent it. He had an overall deal with Jenny, so he sent it to Jenny. Jenny was like, I like this. And then they were like, great. Jenny mostly does reality TV too, so they wanted to bring on like someone who's more in the scripted space. And that's when they brought in Holly and Elena at Dynamic. And Elena had just had lunch with Stacey Silverman, who was like heading up the low budget division at Netflix, which no longer exists. By the way, my show isn't in that division anymore. Uh-huh. We were 1 week into the writer's room, and we went back into Netflix to like pitch out our season 1 arc that the writers had like worked out with us. Because I wrote the pilot, but then from that point on, it becomes a big group effort. Which I can get into that too. Yeah. But basically, we came in, and Deb and I pitched what the writer's room had come up with for the season 1 arc. And we didn't realize that we were pitching to like still be a show, because the division that we were in was no more.
Wow.
So we got absorbed into the young adult division at Netflix, which is where we still are.
Wow. Okay. So those producers came on board. And honestly, I mean, what I'm hearing is that it's just all people who want to work with other people that they like. It's just really people wanting to work with the people that they enjoy.
Yeah. Mostly. Well, that's how it worked for me. But again, like, they all knew me. Like, I was in their assistant land for years. Like, so, it was a big supportive effort, which was nice.
Okay. So now you've pitched with Deb. They've greenlit you. They've moved you around. How did you go about securing your writer's room? How did you go about the casting? How did you go about that how much of it is red tape with Netflix? How much of it is actually your creative vision? Where does that all fall?
Yeah, for the writers, securing the writers. So what happens is now we have a show and we have to hire a writing team to write said show. So we have the budget for a certain amount of writers at different levels of writing. So we put the word out that we were looking for writers first off, and then people
Where
start.
do you put the word out? Is there like a thing?
No. So again, this is where it's helpful to have representation because you put the word out kind of to
Agents.
To the reps. But honestly, more than that, I would say more than we used any agents. Deb has been working in the industry for 25 years and she knows everyone there is to know. I mean, she's written on shows for like so many different networks and genres and everything. So she put the word out to kind of showrunners she knew. She looks at writer Twitter. A lot of people were hired for the show and it was like their first time being this role, first time being that, because obviously it was my first, and it was Deb's been in the industry for 25 years, but she's never been a showrunner. She's always been the number 2.
Wow.
So this was her first time leading the charge. So she really wanted to big on giving opportunity and all of that. So I really let Deb lead the charge on hiring the writers because she does have all that experience. I mean, we would interview people together. We would read their samples. And, writing a good sample is important. Absolutely. But it's much more important just like who you are in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's your vibe? Are you willing to be like a little bit honest, vulnerable, share stuff? Like you have to be able to talk, right? Like you have to be able to be engaging because that's the other thing. Like everyone, like our writer's assistant, Deb's assistant, our script coordinator, like everyone kind of sits at the table. Everyone is encouraged to pitch. That was a big part of how Deb ran the room, which I don't think that's the normal. Again, I've never been in a different writer's room, so I don't have any experience, but that was really important to Deb and also me. But.
Is it that like you have people in a room? I guess this is like depending on, and you just kind of said this, but like depending on the writer's room, sometimes I know it's like a big collaboration. Sometimes it's like you take this episode, you take this episode. How did it end up working for all of you?
So it's actually both for most writers' rooms. It's usually a big discussion and a big collaboration. I can walk you through how you create an episode of TV.
Yeah, we'd love that.
Gladly. Okay, so basically there's a writer of record for each episode, right? But that being said, the process is always kind of the same. So the writer of record will be the one to kind of organize the discussion around their episode, to be the one to kind of like write things on the board, to kind of like lead the charge. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So, okay, let's start with an episode. Let's say, okay, 201 is written. Okay, we had the pilot. I had written it. That being said, it definitely needed some tweaks, some changes, some other voices added to it. So first thing we did in our writer's room was we just blue skied. Like, what does everyone like about the pilot? What do people not like? Like, what can we improve upon? What are people interested seeing going forward in the season? Who are like the other characters that we haven't introduced yet? Like, what are the high school friends going to be like? Like, what are the arcs? So you just kind of like talk, honestly. Like, it's just one big game of make believe. Like, it's you just kind of, and so, and you throw all the spaghetti at the wall, and there's no dumb idea, and you just throw all the spaghetti at the wall. And really where like Deb and I come into play is just like a little bit keeping like the reins going, like keeping us moving forward. Deb more than me. And then for me, it's a little bit more like, oh, creatively that makes sense to this world I've created, or oh, that's really interesting. Like, let's go in that direction. So it's a little bit steering the ship, but really in those first few days, weeks, it's a big group effort. Like it is everyone kind of brainstorming and starting to really feel ownership, I think, over the show, because, this is our show now. Like this is the room of which it will be created. Yeah. So that's what happens first.
Then, how do decisions get made though? Is it like, if you have all of these?
So that's Deb. And then because Deb is so respectful, like me too, but didn't have to be me. Like she's the boss. She's the showrunner. She just like had respect for me. So it was the two of us, but really ultimately at the end of the day, it's Deb. She's the showrunner.
Okay.
So that's how decisions get made. But I would say it's not often that it needs to be like such a frank decision in that stage of the game. This is more of just like, here's what we're interested in. There's no wrong answer. What are you interested in seeing? I'm not gonna be like, no, you're not interested in seeing that. Like, no, like it's a big, we call it blue sky. So, right. It's like the big blue sky. It's you just throwing things into the sky. So that's how it happens first. Then everyone got the pilot. Everyone kind of like had a bit to like read the pilot, send us typed up notes on what they think about the pilot. Then we talked about the pilot. Then I did a rewrite on the pilot. Then from there, then we enter episode. I'm going to skip over episode 2 because Deb and I co-wrote episode 2. I'm going to go to episode 3 because Dave and our 2 other writers wrote episode 3, right? So what starts for that is it's a blue sky day. So, okay. Blue skying episode 3. So that is, okay, here's where we left off on episode 2, right? This just happened. Now here's what do we want to see in episode 3? Like blue sky. So it could be anything. It could be this, it could be that, it could be this. I skipped a step. When we're blue skying the season, we do kind of break it into episodes and we do try to create some sort of a semblance. Like, okay, here's where we're trying to go. Here's our episode 10. Here's what needs to happen. Ginny needs to discover that her mom is a murderer, and her and Austin need to run away, and Paul needs to get elected. Those are like those 3 goals. Big tentpole plot points that need to happen, right? And the plot points all stem from the relationship points. So it's like we need Ginny and Georgia to not be a unit. They need to be broken at the end of season 1. So that's what we're working towards. So once we have that, then you stem off of that. Like, okay, well, if Ginny is broken away from her mom, we want her broken away from everyone else too. We want her broken away from Marcus. We want her broken away from Hunter. We want her broken away from Mang, really everyone except her brother and her father. So we know where we're going in episode 10. And so now we have this whole season of TV to get there and to play around and to do this with all the relationships and to figure out like, okay, what plot points like interest us as a room, like what relationships interest us as a room, what do we want to see, and that just gets thrown on the board. So I'll use episode 3 as example because it's a self-contained episode. It's an easy one to talk about because it's sophomore sleepover. Sophomore sleepover is something that happened in my high school. My mom actually ran it.
I love this.
We had a conference call in the writer's room with my mom, and everything that Ellen says in that episode, Audrey Lampert said.
Was your mom the happiest she's ever been to have been included? Or was this like, she's
no.
just like, no.
My mom, so the thing about writing, like this is not my story. Like I am not any of the characters that you see on screen. Like this is a true, like it's fiction. It's fiction. But that being said, bits of every single writer in that room and as well as me get put on screen, right? Sometimes it's personal stories. So there are definitely some moments that my mom, you should just be careful of being friends or dating a writer or I guess birthing one. She'll see things on screen and she'll be like, huh,
yeah,
that happened, just like, so there are little moments like that. And that's every writer. So
I also imagine too, like people in your life like can read more into things that actually are actually there so that they're like, this had to have been me. And you're like, no, you were not even on my mind when I did this. But people are like, that was me. And you're like, no, literally it came from another person. It's like, I don't believe you.
Well, also too, like you have to name a lot of characters and it sounds cool and fun at first, but then when you're like, just trying to like get the work done and you're in the writer's room and it's like, frick, like, who's one of the moms at the school? Someone give me a name. Like, what's your mom's best friend's name? Like, you just like start using names that you just know because you're just in a rush to do the thing. So, like, my friend Samantha is like, "Why'd you name that character after me?" And I was like, "I don't know. Like, honestly, like I just thought of your name. Like you're not that character at all. I'm so sorry." And like, and like Cynthia, that's like my mom's friend. I was just like, what's like a woman who's like, my mom's age who has a name? My mom's friend Cynthia. Perfect. Unreal. And like, then you're just like, oh, I don't know if I should have done that. Like, so, but like, there's a lot of like little things in there. Everyone has different names that they kind of slide into the show. So that's fun. So now we're in episode 3. We have this like 10 episode, like loose structure outlined of how we want the season to go. So we're in episode 3. Dave and Danielle are the writers of record, and it's sophomore sleepover. So Dave and Danielle are writing their episode. And so what that means is Blue Sky, they lead it. It's like, what do you know, they're kind of like the teacher of the class that day, I guess.
Was it that they were like elected to lead it, or were they like, we feel really compelled for this episode, let us do it?
No, Deb decides who writes which episodes. And it's honestly, that decision is made really before we even fully know anything about the individual episodes. It's just what it is writers, when they're negotiating their contract, because you get paid if your name is on the episode. So if you're a certain, like if you're a co-EP, it's often guaranteed in your contract that you get 2 scripts, right? So that's part of your contract. So if you're whatever, so different amount of people based on your level get different scripts.
Got it.
They like different writers. And again, this is my first writer's room, so I might be saying some of this wrong. And if I am, whatever. So anyways, the first up were Dave and Danielle. And so they were writing their episode. They were episode 3. So they lead the Blue Sky. So we all Blue Sky, we all contribute, all of that. And then after the Blue Sky works, then you kind of have a day where you kind of really start to pull from the Blue Sky, and you start to really kind of give it some shape. Like, okay, this is what we're doing this episode. This is where we left off. This is where we want to go. So what's going on? Like, what are the character arcs of the episode? And then you kind of just do kind of a sentence for each character, like the main characters, about their journey of that episode. And they're like fun little writer sentences, from lost to found, whatever. So it's, and so you plan out like what each character is going to be doing in that episode. I wanted that episode to be very lightly themed Alice in Wonderland, with the idea that sophomore sleepover is going down the rabbit hole, because it's like Ginny and Georgia's like first real assimilating experience into this Wellsbury town. But then also, I just remember when I was in sophomore sleepover and spending the night in the high school, there's this aura of like, even though it's your high school that you go there every day, something about being there after hours is it just feels naughty. Like it just feels off, so you feel a little out of your normal element. Anyway, so I wanted that episode to have that. It was a truly last minute like add in to have the sunglasses moment with Joe and Georgia. Like that was completely a last minute thing, which was kind of fun. But yeah, different things get thrown at the wall. I mean, and things change. Like I think originally in that episode, the kids were doing like, I think a harder drug than just like drinking in the classroom. They were maybe like tripping on acid or something. And Netflix was like, no. Thank you.
This isn't like, Euphoria. We can't go there. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I was like, got it. So yeah, a bunch of people contributed like personal experiences to the episode, and other people, and then also just we're writers are coming up with stuff and personal stuff, and just kind of a combination of all of that. And then once you have all of that, you kind of piece it all together. So then what happens? That's when Dave and Danielle have taken this kind of group think ideas and they beat it out. Where Deb and I come in is it's at each stage, they kind of bring it to us, and we'll either be like, yes, we love that, or like, like, is that really working? Like, can we think more about that? And kind of steer it that way. So then they'll be like, okay, here are our sentences for each character for this episode. Like, here's their emotional journey for the episode, like bing, 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 bing. And it'll be like, okay, great. Or let's think more about this. Like, what else? Like, where did this come from? Let's talk about it further. And then, whatever. Then they'll pitch out the, I'm probably getting this wrong. Honestly, Deb would always make fun of me. I don't know what it is. I'm like so bad at like all things like structure and math and act break. So I'm always just like, la, la, la. So she's like, Sarah, like you're forgetting the step that we do literally every single episode for 2 seasons down. I'm like, oh yeah. So I'm probably forgetting a step, but then you kind of beat it out. So then you have all the things that you want to happen to the character, and you start to organize it. So it's like, this happens in this. I mean, we don't have acts, but this happens here, and then this and this, and it becomes you do it for each character, right? And then the last step, and then they pitch it back to Deb and me. Sometimes we're in the room when they're actually thinking of all this stuff, and sometimes we're not. Like, especially in season 1, we had to go to castings. We had to hire our actual crew for when we were going to be filming. There was just always a lot to do. We had to hire the directors and meet with all the directors. So oftentimes the writers are in the room coming up with the story without Deb and I there. So then what happens is they have these things, we come back into the room and they pitch us that. And that's when we kind of are like, okay, this is what's working, this is what's not working, like here's what we change, like, I'd rather see this there, I want this character to do that, and then we give it back to them. So it's kind of like a tennis match a little bit. And then
how long could that take, that process?
All of this takes like a certain number of days. So it's like Blue Sky is usually 2 days, maybe 3. Then you have like each of these is like a couple of days worth of stuff.
So you're writing basically the whole show over the course of a bit, like almost 3 months, 2-3 months.
It's usually 6 months.
Oh, okay. So you have so much more time.
I
mean, it's not a lot of time, but more than
So then what happens is then they do the weave. So that's like, this happens here, and then this happens here, and then this happens here. And now all the characters are being woven together. It's not just, here's what's going on with Ginny this episode. Here's what's going on with Georgia. Here's what's going on with Marcus. Here's what's going on with Mac. Now it's like, here's how they all interconnect and all of that. And I will say something that I do too is I will also just write random scenes, and I don't know where in the season I want them to fall, but like I will write like the hallway fights. Like I will write a complete random scene that doesn't even necessarily belong anywhere, but I'll just know I want it to happen. And so then when we get to an episode where I'm like, oh, that's where that belongs. And then I'll be like, okay, in this episode, I need us to get to a point where these two characters fight about this. You know what I mean? And so whatever. So things like that happen. So then Dave and Danielle, so they've pitched they've woven it, then they have to do a little story doc. So they write it's like a 3-paragraph thing where it just explains like the very broad sense of the episode. And we send that to Netflix. And then Netflix either approves it or they give us notes or like, okay, well, when you go to script, just make sure it's this, and that. Anyways, so then, but that's just like an overview. Like in case they, for some reason, hated the idea of a sophomore sleepover. They are morally and against it, then we wouldn't do it. But they're just like, okay, sounds good. You can't really tell much from a story doc. But then once that gets approved, we send the writers to outline. And that's when they go off and they write a usually 11-page outline where it's just every scene and it's just a small description of what happens in each scene so that you can really track all the characters and what's going on throughout the whole episode. And then they give that to us. Deb and I will do a pass on it. So we'll change writing. We'll make it maybe sound like put in more voice for the show and whatever. And then we'll send it to Netflix. And then Netflix will send back notes. And that's when we'll either have we'll have a conversation with the writers like, okay, here's what you need to think about for script, or here's what, here are all the thoughts. And then we'll send them to script. And that's when they take this approved outline. Deb and I like it because we've put our stamp on it. Netflix likes it. They've given notes on it. And now the writers are sent off to go actually write the episode. So they write the actual episode. They give it to Deb and I. We'll give them notes. We'll send them back. They'll do another pass on it. They give it back to us. We'll do a rewrite on it or, an edit on it. We'll give it to Netflix. Netflix will give notes. They'll send it back to us. We'll address those notes, send it back to Netflix. That process usually happens about 3 or maybe 4 times. And then finally the episode will get locked.
Wow.
Which isn't locked at all. And that's where, because then when you start filming. Everything changes all over again. Anyway, so it's a really, really big group effort, to create a TV show.
How did you feel about, I know this sounds like an arrogant thing to say, but how did you feel about giving over this idea to other, obviously you chose these writers because you trusted them and you believe in them and you like them, but what was that feeling of oh, now you have autonomy and really building this out and doing that whole thing?
It's not even about trust and I do trust and like them. It's more about everyone, we need to have a lot of different perspectives to join the party because we have an array of characters and you really need to have it be it's just more brains are better than one. If I were to sit and write the whole season, it just would not be as good. And so you need to have everyone in there. And that's how you're really going to get all of these different creative ideas. And they come from, everyone. My favorite idea of season 2, which obviously I can't say what it is, but is from our writer's assistant. She knows it too. I talk about it all the time. Yes. Like, oh, that was my favorite idea, and it does the whole season. It's so good. And when the season finally airs, I'll give her credit for this idea, but I obviously can't do a spoiler. But no, it's interesting because like you're giving over control, but you're also not, because like I do get to do a pass on everything before it goes. Like I do get to infuse, you know, my humor, whatever it is, my voice to things if I feel like it needs it. If I feel like it doesn't, I don't. It just is how it is. Like it is the way to do it. It is the best way to do it. So it doesn't really feel like you're losing anything. It feels like you're gaining quite a bit.
Amazing. Oh my God, there's so much more I want to talk to you about. Ugh. Once you get to Toronto or Canada, wherever you were shooting, and like, what was it like being on set? What was it like doing this whole thing when you've never done this before in this capacity for a scripted moment? Like, what was that for you, just as an overall?
Well, okay. So you know how I said that I always feel like a little magical on my birthday because I'm a Leo and also annoying apparently. But so the first day of filming season 1 of my TV show was on my birthday.
Was it really on your actual birthday?
On my actual birthday was the first day of filming.
And you didn't choose that, it happened.
They couldn't have cared less. I mean, not that they don't care it was my birthday, but like this is like millions of dollars into making a TV show. They're not like organizing this around my birthday.
That's so kismet.
Yeah. Ted Sarandos, doesn't care. Yeah, no. But although they do send me a bottle of wine every year on my birthday.
Yes,
so that's nice. We love. But that felt very kismety, to be honest. And it was also the day, this also wasn't planned. It was the day the Deadline article dropped because I had been like waiting to like tell people about this. And we like, you kind of can, but like you kind of can't. Yeah. So I was just so excited for it to like hit Deadline or hit Variety. And it hit on the first day of filming on my birthday. So that was wild. Yeah. No, it felt unbelievable because to create a show, like you create the characters, like you think of them in your head, they don't exist. And then you think of them and then suddenly there they are in front of you existing. And it's not, and I'm not, a lot of people contribute to this 100%, but there is just something so surreal and special about like seeing a work of imagination. I remember the first scene that we filmed was the flashback where young Georgia meets young Zion. And that was the first scene that we filmed. And it was just like, holy shit, like these characters exist now for the world's consumption. Yeah. Like that is a wild thing to me. Like not only do they exist, like they're not even mine anymore. Like they you know what I mean? Like it's really, really a very surreal experience.
Did you cry?
I was probably too busy like Instagramming and like being a brat. No, I definitely cried. I cried. I was just, my whole family, I was just very, very connected to my family that day. Like I have a very close family and I was just sending them all these photos and I think they couldn't believe it either because, they've known me since I was a little girl and this is all I've ever wanted to do was tell stories and, I love doing it. And so they were just like on cloud 9, couldn't believe this was happening. Thought it was the coolest thing ever. Yeah.
It's amazing. What would be a piece of advice that either you would tell yourself forever ago about this, or if somebody is starting out and listening to this and has a pilot idea or has written a pilot or is on a similar path of hoping to create something in this type of capacity, what piece of advice would you give?
Oh man, I don't even know. There's a lot. I feel like I could probably still take all of my own advice. It's all right. I'm trying to put myself back in that place in 2018. I would say that you really have to believe in yourself because it's just so easy for other people to say no to you. After I sold the show to Netflix, I had sent out the show to different contests. And I got one back being like, this show isn't commercial enough. It'll never sell.
Unreal.
It was definitely a very successful show for the platform. So back to advice. I have a lot only because I'm really struggling, to be honest. It's a really hard job. It's like a very work intensive job. And it's interesting because you feel like you can't really complain about it because it's your dream and it's what you've always wanted to do. And you're so grateful to be able to do it. That being said, like it's really hard. Like even filming, like all the actors, like we're on location for 5 months in the Toronto winter during a pandemic. Like it's really challenging, and it's a lot of work. So I would say and this is really advice for myself, but just know your priorities in life. Like it shouldn't be about success and it shouldn't be about a job. And that's something I'm kind of learning myself right now, is like, it's about your relationships and it's about your friends. And if you are looking for some sort of like Netflix show or success or anything like that to give you some sort of happiness or some sort of feeling of being worthy, then it's not going to happen that way. Like, yes, it feels great. And yes, like I love doing it. I love storytelling. I'm very grateful. But that can't be it. That can't be the thing that you give everything else up for. Like it isn't. It's about the people. It's always about people and relationships, and you being happy is what matters the most. So I guess just prioritize yourself and happiness and try to do that. And yes. And then the other thing I would say too is advice I would give my younger self for when I was trying to be a writer out in LA, it's so hokey and cheesy, but like, to really believe in yourself, because it's just so easy for other people to say no, but no one else like knows you like you know you. And if you know you can do it, you have something valuable to say, what you're worth in a way that others just never will. And that's fine, but you have to be your own strongest advocate and have to be on your own team. So that's my advice, is don't be ashamed if you haven't hit that goal that you're trying to hit yet, or you don't have that thing that you think you should have. Because that's all complete bullshit.
Yeah. I think both of those things are real and empowering, but also it's like it's a check, to like keep yourself in check with what it is that you love. I would imagine, if you are somebody who is pulling, inspiration, let's say, from your own life, whether it's things that you've done or people that you've met, arguably like prioritizing life stuff so that you can pull from things is only going to help the way in which you can show up anyway.
Yeah, you have to live your life to write your life. You kind of have to stay nimble, stay humble, stay all those things. But I think ultimately, like I just go back to prioritize yourself, like know what you're worth and prioritize your own happiness, and don't look for any kind of like external benchmark or accomplishment to give yourself that, because that's not a way to get it.
Yeah. I'm so grateful for the time that we had here. You have shared, I feel like, dispelled a lot of the things that we think we know about how things are created. I actually could have talked to you for so many more hours. I wanted to know so much more, but all that you've shared already, I feel like for me has been really informative and clarifying about just the world. And I know how busy you are. And so I really appreciate you taking time to even just have this conversation and step away from the gazillion projects that you are in the midst of doing. For the people who are listening, within your own boundaries, if you feel comfortable, what are the ways in which people can follow along with your journey or reach out or spread you elsewhere?
Oh God. Yeah, I'm on Instagram and TikTok. God help me. Yeah, Slampy with double L's. So SLLAMPY. If you Google Sarah Lampert, I'm sure it'll come up. There is a motocross Sarah Lampert. She's like this badass bitch who like does motocross.
Have y'all ever connected?
No. Maybe now I could. I think I tried on like Facebook once where I was like, Sarah Lampert, and she's like, nothing. And I was like, that's fair. That's fine. I get that.
I did that to the other Jennifer Apple, who I think runs like an interior design company in Canada.
Oh, fun.
And she has never responded to me either. And I feel a little sad about it.
Yeah, if you Google Sarah Lampert, like there, I do show up. I mean, obviously I've Googled myself because Leo, but yeah, sure. But I do show up. But like way more interesting is this like very badass motocross girl. This is like very cool.
So when we see a movie that's all about that, we'll be like, we knew why.
Yeah. They can follow along like that.
Do we have a time frame for season 2 of Ginny and Georgia?
Oh my God, I know. I can't post like a photo of my dog without 100 people being like, where's season 2?
Yeah.
I'm so bad at secrets, and I like hate secrets, and I love sharing everything.
I know.
So if I knew when season 2 was coming out, I would be the first person to be like, guys, gather around. Like, I have no idea. I can give a little insight into why I don't know. So we're still doing post-production. It's in the like the edit is all finished, the picture edit, but it's still doing I think 2 episodes need to be color corrected still, and then 2 episodes need to be sound mixed, and 1 episode is still being scored. With the composers and great music. But it's wrapping up. But the point is once all of that is finished, then what happens is, because it's Netflix and because their whole philosophy is everyone at once. So it will drop around the world at the same time. It'll be available on the platform. So what they have to do to prepare for that, first off, there's quality control that they have to do. They have to make sure that no noise is like poking out in a way that like doesn't sound smooth for the show, or like anything is whatever. They do quality control checks over the episode, which is like very technical, and I genuinely have no idea how that happens. But then the thing that takes more time is they have to dub the whole show in all of the different languages that Netflix offers, which I did know the number at one point, but I obviously never remember any numbers ever, but it's an impressive amount of number. And they dub the show in all these different languages, and then it drops at the same time. And then also what they do is they subtitle the show too, but they'll ask for, like, last season, the writer's assistant and the script coordinator put together this incredible list, which just like basically surmised like all of the like kind of slang that we use in the show, like just like teen, how the teens talk. I don't know, obviously have no idea how the teens talk, but whatever. So like any like, but like any kind of like phrase that's like very uniquely American that's in the show is they'll kind of surmise it so that it can be easily translated to all the different languages. So there's all of this stuff that's like going on behind the scenes that they do to all of their shows, and that's why I have no idea when it'll drop, because all of that takes a good amount of time.
So follow along for Sarah's socials.
So
you'll know, but like that the point is we'll know. You'll know when you know, we'll know. Like
when I know, you'll know. Yeah. Short answer to that is I don't know.
Great. Anything else that is on your heart that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Anything else that's on my heart? I don't know. Just everyone out there, just be well. It's been a hard few years, and take care of yourself.
Yeah. I adore you. Thank you for this.
Oh, it was so good to see your face again. It's been so many years.
Same. I'm obsessed.
Yeah, great.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.